we got something started called Sport for Life. But back then, in 2006, I had absolutely no idea what we were doing. We had no staff, no money. I've had a different job throughout the years because, you know, when you go from 0 staff to 26 staff and from no money to 1.4 million and supporting 0 young people to working with up to 3,000 learn, I have to understand what leadership is, how to be a leader, how to grow an organisation.
Alhamdulillah, God gave me everything. Alhamdulillah.
You make a choice and say, come hell or high water, I'm going to be this. Then you should not be surprised when you are that. And I gave my soul to this game. There's nothing more I can give.
Everest is obvious to climb because it's there, it's a mountain. Personal Everest, you can't see it. No one can see it but you. Never give up on a dream.
Just look deep within myself and ask myself how much I want it, what am I here for? Don't lose that desire.
I want to unleash the beast.
When I sat here in this crowd, US 93, and saw all these guys, you know, I realized it's there. It's there for the taking if I put the time in.
Be true to the game, because the game will be true to you. If you try to shortcut the game, then the game's going to shortcut you.
Welcome to the game. Today we've got Tom from Sport for Life, the founder and now the CEO for the last 14 years.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about leadership and change management and getting the MBA and how did that kind of come about? Because I saw on LinkedIn it was kind of like a level 5 in the beginning, and now you've also got your masters in it.
So I think we have a real positive culture around learning and developing at the organisation. So we really want to always be learning, always be developing. And obviously I had my undergrad degree before I started the organisation, and then I'd done a few different courses to just support my own learning throughout those now 15, 16 years. But then I did a qualification in change management, so really trying to understand the changes that people and organisations go through, and how we can support that, especially as a growing organisation. Then did a level 5 in leadership and management. And then it was quite opportunistic, really. Just the opportunity came up to study at BCU, Birmingham City University, to do a 2 years executive MBA course, which obviously focuses on leadership and management, and started that during the lockdown pandemic, which was quite interesting. But yeah, it's been a brilliant learning process.
You mentioned your undergraduate degree. What was that in?
So that was in sport and exercise science with physiology.
And how did that kind of the transition from obviously we know the sport transition in terms of like you're doing sport and then you go into Sport for Life. Yeah. But what's the how did business come into it? Like where was the sense there? Yeah,
you're right. It's quite different. The degree was a science degree, and what I don't really use that in day to day at Sport for Life. But I think that sport theme has always been throughout the whole journey from my childhood, growing up, then studying at uni, and then setting up Sport for Life as well. So there's no real tangible link between the degree I did and the organisation.
But how did you kind of come about it?
The degree?
The organisation.
Oh, the organisation, yeah. So
you've done the degree, but then like where did the transition come in? Like how did Sport for Life?
Yeah, so it was when I was finishing university, I was kind of spending a lot of time just reflecting and thinking about what my key passions are. And sport is my biggest passion, always has been, and I think it always will be, watching, playing. So growing up, played a lot of sport at school, at university to quite a decent standard, and played a lot with my brother. There's only 18 months between us, so I think our parents got us playing sport as soon as they could. Is it? Yeah. And I think I just learned and had an appreciation for sport from quite an early age. So really believed in the power of sport, not just for what it can do for your physical health, but what it can do for your mental well-being. And yeah, that was one key and core passion. Also, big passion for Birmingham, born and bred. Other than university, when I was away for 3 years, and I did a gap year actually before uni. So I lived in Brazil for half a year, and that was quite a cultural experience. We were really immersed in a in Sao Paulo, and I lived with a Brazilian family, and we did a lot of work in some of the favelas there. So that in many ways kind of planted the seed for how can we use sport as a tool for social good, for youth work, for supporting communities. So yeah, that was before university, then went to uni. And then it was really just bringing all those passions together. One of the founding trustees was my dad, who was an inner city GP here in Birmingham and had quite an interest in health inequalities. So we got something started called Sport for Life. But back then in 2006, I had absolutely no idea what we were doing. We had no staff, no money, and no idea.
Yeah, exactly. But talk to me about, because I didn't know about the Brazil. Like, talk to me, how did that kind of come about? Was that through school or what?
Yeah, so I always wanted to do a gap year after school. So I knew, you could have that year gap between school and studying. So I'd already had my degree lined up to start the year after I'd finished. And then it was kind of one of these companies that do gap years. And instead of just traveling, and I love traveling, I've done quite a bit of traveling over the years, been really privileged to have that opportunity. But I wanted to do something that was a cultural experience, really, embed myself in a different country, a different culture, somewhere I didn't know the language.
Why?
Different people. Why? Don't know. Good question. Back then, quite naive, not sure. Just felt maybe a bit of a calling to immerse myself in something like that. Do something different.
I did a similar one, not to your level, like far-fetched, but like I went for about 2 weeks in South Africa.
Oh,
with
okay.
school. Yeah, and for me, that obviously with school, so I was with English-speaking people, but that kind of taught me a lot in terms of like, because it's Africa, like I've been to different continents, but Africa seemed like totally alien, you know what I mean? Like in terms of like, because Europe's a bit similar in terms of like when you look at the buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
And Pakistan's home for me, but South Africa is totally different. Like when you walk in, like I remember coming at the airport and I just remembering like it just looked different. It's a whole different world. The people are different. They're speaking different, and that kind of it planted a seed in my head because in South Africa you can see the stars as well at night. So looking at the stars, and obviously in the UK you can't see nothing at night. So I was just looking at the stars and I was thinking like, there's more out there. Like for me, like beyond the horizon, and like I gotta think bigger. And like if someone can do it here, then I can do it there. But they got a way harder job than me. So for you, what was Brazil kind of like? Because I feel like it was like what happened to me, but on like a bigger level. Because we were there for about 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite eye-opening in terms of poverty and deprivation and disadvantage. I mean, the favelas really kind of deprived communities and some people really struggling to get by. They don't have the kind of healthcare and quality of life that some of us and a lot of us have here. But it was the kind of stark contrast of the deprivation next to some pockets of wealth within Sao Paulo in the city. So you would literally have a favela and then 200 yards down the road, you'd have one of the richest estates in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, and they have like the 4-story kind of like buildings.
Yeah, and there was no integration of those communities, and it just kind of seemed so wrong. But it was a big learning curve, real nice cultural experience to get to know different perspectives, different outlooks on life, certainly different quality of life, certainly more struggles and challenges, and sometimes it was interesting the way they saw me and saw us, the people that were there. This kind of white male Western guy coming in, they kind of put me on a pedestal which I shouldn't have been on, which was quite eye-opening as well in terms of equality and difference. But
and also kind of like the mentality, as in like they saw you as bigger just because of your skin color, like when you could have been the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was no real reason. It was almost like this guy's come here to help us, and we need him. I mean, I was there with other people as well, and they thought the same. But the irony is they taught me probably more than I taught them. And I think we did a lot of sport, and sport is a universal language. We worked with a lot of young people in these favelas. You'd go there with a football in your hand, and without saying a word of any language, they'll just flock around and start playing. So, sport's that universal language. And I suppose without knowing it, because I was probably still a bit ignorant to how can we use sport for social good back then, but I really got a sense of how the power of sport and how it can be used to engage, to teach people new skills, to change lives.
Yeah. We're talking off camera about it, like I call it a drug, you call it a bug. But was that kind of how you formulated in terms of like having the passion for sport and helping young people as well?
Yeah, it's difficult to know really. I think
Just looking back,
Brazil certainly planted that seed. It certainly helped. It's difficult to know. Had I not done a gap year, would I have set up the charity and the organisation? Don't know. Maybe. But I think sport has always been that common thread throughout my life, and especially within university travels, and then after uni when I set up Sport for Life.
So then, you know, when you was picking a university degree, so obviously you decided before you were in Brazil that you're going to do sports and what was it?
Sport and exercise science and
sports
physiology.
And exercise science and physiology. How did that kind of come about? Like, let's go try to be back.
A bit back. So always really interested in science. When I was at school, I studied 2 science subjects at A level and had a passion for it. And my mum's a biology teacher, my dad's a doctor, my younger brother's a doctor. So kind of there's quite a bit of science in the family. That was more just interest in that subject area. I mean, the reality is it probably would have made more sense to study business or management or sports management or sport development studies, things like that, and would have been probably more relevant for what I ended up doing. But it was still a degree. It was still required critical thinking and studying and researching and learning.
Did you have an idea of what you want to do afterwards when you were going through your degree, or were you just kind of doing the degree?
No, I was just enjoying being a student and being away from home, which was good. So I didn't really have an idea. I think it was only when it was coming to the end of 3rd year and I was really kind of reflecting on my key passions and what I wanted to do next.
But it's kind of like hits that you gotta like think about your next steps now.
Exactly, And I mean, people have different paths and different routes. Of course they do, but a lot of my friends were doing the kind of graduate route, so I was getting a graduate job and definitely wanted to do something a bit different. Wanted to run my own thing, but wanted to have a kind of mechanism to give back to the city that I was really fond of, that I grew up in, and use sport and use that passion that I had.
Where does that mentality come in terms of like wanting to do your own thing? Because I feel like that's not the same for a lot of people. Like I can relate because I kind of got that same kind of thing when I told you about before, when I got that bug. But for you, where did that kind of come from? Like you wanted to do your own thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. And
because obviously your dad's a GP,
and
he's got, was it his own practice or was he working with someone?
It was, he was at his own practice.
His own practice. Okay, so that's a kind of inkling there. And then your mom's a biology teacher, she's part of a system. So where did it come back for you? Yeah,
it's difficult to say, and I don't know categorically, but I certainly think I was afforded a lot of opportunities growing up. For sure, I feel really privileged in that sense. So I probably could fail throughout education and things would probably be okay, which isn't the case for a lot of young people and families in Birmingham and across the country. So maybe that contributed to it. I think always like a project, always like to learn. And I think, even just those 2 things are really good foundations for starting something. You need to learn, you need to develop, you need to try and improve.
Yeah, 100%. But then it's also like that mentality in terms of like it's all on your own back. As in like you can't, like there's nothing to fall on, like you can't blame someone else or do something else. So then was it like, because I'm trying to look back at your story because I can't really find it in terms of like going through your uni degree and going to Brazil, but where was where did the leadership come in? Were you the captain of your football team back in the day, or like how did you kind of transpire?
Do you
know what I mean? Like, why did you become a leader?
Yeah, good question. I think probably 2 parts. One was maybe I had a little bit of a proclivity for that. So I was a captain at university, at a football team.
Yeah, so I banged up then.
But I think it was more something that I learned and had to learn. I'm a kind of ambivert on the extrovert introvert scale. So I'm not super extrovert. So actually it's probably something that didn't come that naturally to me initially, especially running your own organization. So I think it was a recognition that this is something I have to learn. I have to understand what leadership is, how to be a leader, how to grow an organization. And I mean, you mentioned it's almost all on my back.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, maybe initially when it's kind of just you and there's you don't have many other staff. But I think as our team has grown over the years, I've got such a good team around me and such good people who are leaders in their own right that actually it's not all on me. Like, you know, we're a team, we're approaching this together, and everything we've achieved, I wouldn't have achieved that without the amazing team that we've got at Sport for Life.
But it's another thing, like you said then, it's about developing that team though, and that comes from you. So when I say all on your own back, I meant as in the inception. I meant like in the first final stages. But let's talk about Sport for Life.
Yep.
So what was the idea in the beginning and how has it kind of changed?
Yeah, so initially, and I think I mentioned we didn't have that much of an idea what we're doing straight away, but it was for the first few years, the focus was much more on participation. So we were more sport for sport's sake as opposed to sport for social good like we are today. And so initially the focus was just getting as many young people participating in sport as possible. It was as simple as that. So it was about outputs. It wasn't about outcomes like we are today. It wasn't about the impacts and the changing of lives that we're trying to achieve. It was just, we believe in sport, so let's get as many young people playing sport as possible. And we focused on kind of 4 key inner city areas initially. Football was really popular, and we were quite successful in the first few years at drawing down like sport specific funding. So Football Foundation, Sport England, the FA, funders like that invested in what we did, and you know it was really good for the first few years, and we managed to grow quite a bit on that basis. But then in 2010 we had quite a key strategic change. We changed the way in which we use sport. So sport became just the vehicle,
like the carrot,
the conduit to go on to achieve something much more tangible with young people. And the reason we did that, one was more of a strategic funding reason. We wanted to engage with non-sports funders who previously weren't interested. So, you know, the likes of the lottery that you can get.
You're trying to make yourself more palatable.
Exactly. And the other more important reason was we spoke to hundreds of young people in inner city Birmingham, and they said to us that actually they need a bit more support than just playing sport. So youth unemployment was a key issue, mental health challenges, crime and antisocial behaviour, educational attainment. So we knew we needed to do more than just sport, and use sport as a brilliant tool, using the power of sport to change lives in other areas. And over those 12 years since 2010, we've really grown our model, grown the organisation, and it's brought us to where we are now, which is the kind of leading sport for employment charity in the West Midlands. We're delivering really structured sport and physical activity sessions, accredited qualifications, and one-to-one mentoring to support young people towards better futures. You're
helping over 500 people at the moment, aren't you?
Yeah, so we engage. I mean, we engage.
That's massive.
Yeah, we engage a few thousand young people each year, but we kind of really intensively support around 2,000 of those, and it's through those activities I mentioned. But it's quite kind of intensive. So we'll work with young people for up to a whole year. So some of the young people we work with, they really need a lot of support, and we want to support them, and we want to give them that opportunity to create a better future for themselves. So we really support them to build their confidence, transform their key life skills, get into work, start earning, and really just be that helping hand. We believe in young people, and we believe they have the potential to go on to achieve amazing things, and we just want to be that helping hand for them.
Let's because obviously we're talking more about that later on, but let's go back a tiny bit in terms of, let's talk a bit more about the finding of Sport for Life. So when obviously you talked about the initial idea was just for sport, but then you touched on it there, but the transition from sport for sport to sport for young people. So obviously there's the incentive of the young people ask for it themselves and
Yeah.
being more palatable to funders.
Yeah.
But then also it's within yourself, because a lot of people will see them signs in any business or any kind of organization or anything where there's like a profit or loss margin or any sort, you know what I mean, though, any sort of like machine whatever the case may be. But they might not take that plunge and just stick to what they were good at in terms of like sport for sport and just keep going in that direction. So why make that change for yourself?
Yeah, good question. I think we'd probably got to a point where we were kind of plateauing a bit. So each year was kind of quite similar. I think we had similar, for I think a 3-year period, we had similar number of staff, similar number of young people we were supporting, similar model, similar turnover, etc. And for some organisations that might be fine, and that's great, and that's laudable, and there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, we wanted to be ambitious, we wanted to grow, and that was always driven by our North Star of changing more younger people's lives. So I think we recognised we can just keep doing the same, or we can change and take a risk. And, risk is important in business and in life. Yeah, exactly. So I think, there's two things definitely came into play that I mentioned. So the funding side, we knew we needed to diversify our funding model. We knew we wanted to access funds where the door is currently closed. So we needed to change our model.
In terms of like that recognition of what's going wrong or what's causing the plateau at the moment, was that instant, or was it kind of like you had to kind of sit down and work it as a team? What it actually was that was causing it to plateau?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had to sit down and work it out. I think I'm big on collaboration and co-production. So we want to, when we write a strategy, when we do a change, we want to ask young people, ask different stakeholders, what do our staff think? Like this, it isn't just me dictating what we do and what happens. So I think that was a team effort. People brought different insights and different research. But I think also we were looking across the sector, and the sport for development sector has gone through a lot of change in the last decade. But we saw other people using sport really well to go on to achieve something more than just sport. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with sport for sport's sake. Sport for participation is great. But we felt we could do more. And you're right, it was a combination of insights from the team, looking at what others do, being quite critical of ourselves, but in a good way, using that as a tool to
identify
improve.
where you went wrong. Yeah,
exactly.
But where for you, because you seem like an open book, like you keep saying us instead of I, or these kind of words that I pick up on these little things. And also when you mention talking to other people and getting feedback from not just stakeholders or whoever it may be, but young people as well. So has that always been the case for you in terms of you've always been asking questions, and you don't really go in blind to a situation, you always ask questions, ask other people's opinions, and then kind of formulate your own?
Well, knowledge is power, isn't it? The more we know, the better position we're in to make decisions. We really believe in co-production of our strategy. So we've just launched our latest 5-year strategy, and it's the most co-produced in our history. We asked young people, we asked suppliers, we asked partners, we asked funders, we asked corporate partners, we asked staff, we asked trustees and volunteers. So we asked everyone that works with us, what do you think? Where are our areas for development? Where should we be going? What's our direction? But, you said about us and me, and it's so important that that's a collective voice. But sometimes I have to make difficult decisions in bringing that all together. If you try and please everyone, you please no one, as they say. So yes, we want to listen, and we will listen, and we will implement that. But, there still needs to be a decision on where we're going. And I think that's where we've tried to really get that balance. It's not all my decision. It's not all about me as the founder and CEO. It is a collective voice. People do have a say in where we're going and the direction of the organization. But then I've got that difficult job of trying to bring that all together and make some of those difficult decisions, whether we go A or B or X or Y.
So was that always immediate in terms of co-producing and getting other people's feedback on things, or has that just come about as you've grown into your role as CEO?
Yeah, bit of both, I think. I mentioned that at school I was really interested in science, and I think that kind of stems from being really inquisitive and curious. That's one of my values, being curious. I wanna understand more. I want to explore things. I don't want to come to a conclusion straight away. We live in a world now where you're either on this side or you're that side. And I think I always, try to seek to understand first and acknowledge areas of shades of grey and areas of nuance. So I think there's that element, being curious and being interested in science and trying to search for the answer. But I think also I've never really had a massive ego, and I know a lot of people have fed that back to me internally, which is great to hear. But I've always recognized that other people are more expert in areas than I am, and so I want to hear that, and I want to get that collective voice. As we've grown, we've gone from 0 staff to 26 full-time staff now, as well as a number of partners. When we hire new people, we don't just hire them so we can tell them what to do. We hire them so they can tell us what to do. In many ways, we want good people in our organization, and that comes with acknowledging that I don't have all the answers. I'm not an expert at everything. And therefore there's that humility to say, I don't know, and I need others to help and support me with that. And I think that's a really positive culture to have. So we get a lot of support. We get external consultants to support what we're doing. We get business advice. Our board really help us. Our staff, within the leadership team and outside of the leadership team, support us in the direction we're going. So I think it's probably a combination of those two things.
I think that's what separates you from being a founder and a CEO, is having the ability to ask, like as you said, external consultants and ask different people opinions, like knowledgeable people, not just anyone. But then the other question is, how do you separate it? So when you've got all these different opinions, so let's say, for example, you got two experts in that one particular section, and one saying one thing, the other one saying another thing, and they're two polar opposites. So then you got to make a decision yourself. They're both experts in the field, but they might have a different opinion. So
well, that's where leadership comes in, and that's where it's really important that you have leaders that can make decisions like that. And it's you got to be honest that it's not always going to please everyone. Some of these difficult decisions. I think we want to be data led. So I really want to understand what is the problem we're trying to fix here, what is the information, what are the key insights, and then ultimately I've got to make a call on that. But you also mentioned something interesting about kind of founder versus CEO, and I think what I've had to do over the years is really try hard, and it is hard at times, to try and detach from the identity of a founder, because a lot of founders of organizations, you're kind of you're like, if your identity is tied up in being a founder, that can bring a lot of challenges, I think. And especially as we've grown and I've tried to step away from some of the detail, and you've got to really trust other people, which I do.
Relinquish control.
Exactly. And I think that's where I've done a lot of reflecting, and I've tried to almost detach that identity. So I see being CEO of Sport for Life and being founder it's not who I am necessarily. It's a role I have, a really important role at that, but it doesn't kind of define me. I'm defined by my values and who I am as a person. So I think you can have a lot of challenges when you attach your identity to something really strongly, because let's say something happened to Sport for Life, that would then have an impact on who I am. Or let's say, and this won't happen, and hopefully it never will happen, but let's say there was huge funding issues and we were much smaller or couldn't exist as an organization in 5 years' time. Then if I'm so tied up in that identity, then that would make me feel like a failure. Whereas actually I am my values. So if I'm a curious human being and I can exercise that throughout my life, then that's great.
It's like taking the transferable skills. Because I feel like I went through that in terms of like what you just mentioned there. You said it as an example, but for me it was real life. Like talking about when I mentioned earlier about the pizza shop. So that pizza shop, it was kind of like my identity, because I never had a job before that. So at 17, 18, I was 18 years old and I still did my A-levels. So that was kind of my first thing. Like obviously it's not mine, it's my dad's, but because it's family owned. So I was kind of managing the pizza shop from like, as you said, like, you know, when you're on about going from production level to doing everything. So I was getting the stock in the morning. Then full, like basically a 16-hour shift till midnight, and then going home and then doing the same thing all over again. And I'm balancing my A-levels as well at the same time. So it was kind of like, I was young at the time, but I let that identity shape me. So then when we couldn't do anymore and we kind of moved on, like I was still kind of hurting, because it was like I've been doing that for so long, and that was kind of my routine. And then when it doesn't work out for whatever reason, then it's like, what do you do next? So for me, it was like a year of like reflection at like 20 years old in terms of going through COVID, because it was like, what do I do after this? Because my whole identity and like what kind of shaped me. It's interesting you said that, because that was kind of the pizza shop. So I kind of relate to that in terms of like not separating it. So then when the realization come for you in terms of like that transition, because you spoke about it there, but like, was it immediate? Was it like in 2006, or was it like 2010, 2011?
Yeah,
like, how far along were you?
Yeah, probably a gradual process, to be honest. I think maybe it was gradual and got to a point where I realized I was spending too much time worrying about things that were kind of outside of my control, and I'm worrying more because it's my own organization and because I'm a founder, as opposed to just coming in as a CEO like many other people do. I think, you know, we're quite people centered, and we're an organization of people supporting other people. So it's so high up in our values and our culture being people centered. And I think if there are any issues with people or certain challenges, that would often play on my mind, and I might be at home thinking about it too much. And I think I came to
it's natural.
Very natural as a founder. So I think I came to a realization that this is worrying me too much. And I think then the penny dropped that it's because I was tying my identity into being a founder of Sport for Life. And then and it's a gradual process. You can't just do it like that. Part of the fabric. I mean, I've heard of people before saying, "Oh, you're Tom, you're Mr. Sport for Life." And it's kind of
Is that because just remembering now, looking at your LinkedIn, you put founding CEO instead of founder and CEO. Is that part of the thing, or is that natural?
Same thing. Yeah. Okay, some people just call it founding CEO.
Okay. I just thought it might be like a thing that you do just because you don't want to be a founder and a CEO.
No. I mean, the organization. So I actually kind of co-founded the organization. So it was myself and my older brother. We both set it up together. In terms of thinking of those passions and setting the organization up together. So it was a bit of a kind of family element initially. But then he kind of left after a few years.
I didn't realize
travel
that.
Journalist. So it's kind of, I mean, I'm a co-founder, but for kind of all intents and purposes, I just put founder, because otherwise it just raises the question, who was the other?
Exactly. Like it doesn't really matter. But I just thought there might be a link there, but I thought like I might just bang out a link, but it didn't work out. But mine, we carry on. So talking about the leadership, because obviously we mentioned at the start of the podcast, but that was kind of like what you've kept going, because it's all good starting it, and then once you got your level 5, just being happy there. So then what made you go on to do the masters, and how did that kind of tie in with Sport for Life?
I think I often say to people, it's kind of, even though I say I've been for 16 years at the same organization, but actually I've had a different job throughout the years, because you know, when you go from 0 staff to 26 staff, and from no money to 1.4 million, and supporting 0 young people to working with up to 3,000.
It's a totally different class.
So what I was doing in 2007, where it was cleaning, delivering sessions, IT manager, marketing manager,
jack of all trades,
all badly. But jack of all trades, to then kind of now it's completely different job. So I've had to evolve, and you're right that those training came from the realization that I need to develop myself. If I want to lead this organization and have that amazing privilege and honor to do it, which it is, then I need to develop myself continually. And we've got that culture within the organization where, you know, every day school day, we always want to learn, we always want to develop, we always want to acknowledge that we're not experts and we can do more and be more. And
so where does it end?
Sorry?
Where does it end?
Where does it end?
Or do you just keep going?
I think, you know, our vision, as a lot of visions are, is a level playing field where every young person has the opportunity to create a better future for themselves, that's almost unattainable. We know that's kind of utopian, so we're always trying to reach for the unattainable in many ways, but I think that's the way it should be, because that just keeps us on that journey of trying to be better, trying to grow, being ambitious, you know, being on the right side of young people, and just always seeking to be better and do more. So that journey never ends, I don't think.
So then when you're talking about leadership and like, well, again, just before I forget, when we take it back, because I forgot about this question, I had it in my head, but you know when you want about people tell you that you have no ego, but then when it comes to making big decisions and stuff, I feel like you have to have a certain amount of ego to be like I gotta make this decision my own. So how do you balance that out in your head? Because you're not very what's the word? Like you're not very attached in terms of like you're attached to sport for life, but you're not attached to the point where you're part of the fabric. Like you've kind of disassociated. I can't say the word. Disassociated. You disassociated yourself from it. But how does that all play in your mind? How do you kind of separate it?
But I think
you're attached to it. You're not attached to it.
Yeah, I think you can be assertive without having an ego. So it's kind of, if people understand that there's different views across the table, and by the way, you need to have like a safe psychological space in your boardrooms and in your meeting rooms.
So people are comfortable to speak.
People need to be able to disagree with you. People need to be able to say what they think. That's great. That's fine. Feedback's a gift. We want to hear these things. You know, we keep talking about developing and improving, but if we can't, we need to listen to what people are saying and have that space where people can say what they think. And sorry, we were saying about being, you can be assertive, and people need to recognize, you know, there's different views. I'm making a decision with the best interests of the organization front and center. So you may not agree with it, but you can agree and trust that respect it. And respect the decision that I'm making, which I believe is within the best interests of the organization. But I think that's where, you know, we have a supportive board. We've got really good what we call schema delegation, so we know who's responsible for what types of decisions. But it's a similar analogy. We talk about you can be assertive without being arrogant or having an ego. Is the difference between being kind and being caring. I think a lot of people are caring, which is telling them what they want to hear, whereas being kind is telling people what they need to hear. And I think that's almost
I've heard that quote before. I'm a coach man, but I haven't heard that one.
And it almost calls for a bit of vulnerability, and it's often difficult, but actually you can have difficult conversations, difficult discussions, give honest and open feedback to someone that they need to hear, and that is being kind. And I think we should be more kind, not caring. It's not always just about, I'll tell someone what they want to hear.
Pander to them,
so you're a people pleaser all the time. So that is always a challenge, but I think that's.
But how do you recognize it? Was that always hard to recognize in terms of like who's actually pandering to you and who's actually telling you as it is?
I think it comes down to trust, really. And I think we kind of have a saying where we trust until you have reason not to. We want to implicitly trust. We give a lot of autonomy to staff, so there's boundaries within which they have to operate. You know, they've got to operate within our model, within our policies, within our procedures. But how they actually do that often is up to them. One of our mentors might have a different style to another mentor. And we try and empower staff and value staff and give them that autonomy to do that. But and that's great, but performance does matter. So kind of, you know, we still have objectives, we have KPIs, and that's okay that performance matters, and it should matter.
How does that process can happen? Is that through trial and error in terms of finding the balance between what the boundaries are and then the flexibility within that to kind of like navigate your own kind of
I think a combination of stuff I learned through some of the training, but more so is just on the job, I suppose. You know, we over 16 years, I'm sure you can imagine there's lots of mistakes we made, loads of mistakes, still make mistakes.
But I don't really look at the years, I kind of look at the growth, because a lot of anything business, charity, whatever you want to be, they've been around for about 25, 20, 30 years, but then you don't really see like the actual action. You know what I mean? Like you just kind of just see, or even like there might be a business, let's say a corner shop or something like, or well, not a corner shop, bad example, but like a pizza shop or a burger shop. Like they're not really growing, they're not really bringing on new staff or going to, let's say, pizza shop number 2 or like different things. You know what I mean? So I don't really look at the years. I kind of look at the growth and like what's actually happening next.
I think people want to be treated like human beings, not a resource to be allocated. People want to be valued. People want meaning and purpose in their role. They want to be able to make an impact. And so I think that's how we should treat our people in an organization. People are motivated by those things. And
plus everyone's kind of wired differently. Like, because I realized that in the pizza shop, because pizza shops is a good place to learn in terms of like the workers there, no disrespect, but they don't want to be there. And no one wants to be in front of a 300-degree oven, like trying to cut a bit of done, you know what I mean? They don't want to be there. And it's a low-paid job as well. So then for me, it was kind of learning that although we're paying them for a responsibility and that's their job, it doesn't work like that. Like the world doesn't work like you gotta give them more. You gotta be a bit more uplifting, or if they're not having the confidence to do something, trying to give them that confidence to a certain point. You gotta have that ethic within you to kind of uplift everyone else.
I think two things on that. One is people will have different motivations for why they want to work at your 100%. Organization. So some people aren't careerists, and that's absolutely fine. And if they want to come in, and you know, we've got some stuff like this, if they want to work with young people and support them, and they're maybe not really interested in a career path, and that's absolutely fine, and that can work, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, society sometimes says no, you got to keep trying to climb the ladder. You don't have to. But then similarly, if people are ambitious and do want to progress, then great, and it's good to know that, and that's part of the expectations conversations we'll have at the start. But I think I can imagine some of the stories you said at the pizza shop. Often it might be difficult for some people, and if it's just a job for them, and they might not be motivated. But I think you can still exercise some of your values even in a role like that. You know, if you're really big on kindness, for example, you could. Yes, it might not be a job that you want to be in forever, but how can you be kind to the people you meet? How can you be kind to customers? And then if that's your values and who you are, you'll get more happiness, and you'll be more content through that.
100%.
It's not just seeing it as it's a job, and it might be a stepping stone, but you can still align it to your values. I think that's a good mentality to have, because like life's not always like just full of peaks. Like there's gonna be troughs, and there's gonna be like things in the middle where you can't really you're trying to figure it out and trying to get through it. But through that, you gotta be kind. Like you gotta be like nice to people, and even though you might be burning inside or have like 100 things on your mind, you gotta like when you talk to someone, you gotta pretend like it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? Because no one really cares about. Like they're gonna excuse you for being angry or being aggressive if you haven't. If you're what's the word? If you're not being nice to them. It's not your fault. We say this as well. Some things, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. So it might not be your fault that something bad happened to you, but it's your responsibility to still act in a kind, decent and progressive way.
They're just having good manners. That's a basic.
Cost nothing.
So then 100%. So then now my final kind of question is so how did it kind of change you from obviously becoming a founder to a CEO, but then as you said before, taking from 0 to 1.4 million? It's a big transition. Like how come you never rested on your laurels? Like let's say when you got to 600,000 or like got to that kind of mark, like why keep pushing? Obviously there's a drive to help support more young people, but for you internally, like what was your kind of drive? I think a few different things. One, like you say, that's our North Star, our central value. We wanna work with more young people. It's not we want to grow to that level because we'll get an even bigger office or we can do X or Y. It's because we know our model works, and we know that we want to support more young people and work with more delivery partners. So that's kind of one side of it. I think also I've come to realize that it's the journey that's rewarding and fulfilling, not the kind of destination. I know it sounds a bit cliched, but it's 100%. If we got, I realized that myself as well. When we got to 500,000 turnover, however you want to look at it, when we got to 500,000 turnover, or when we got to working with 500 young people, or when we got to
this number of geographical areas. Things don't stop then, and suddenly you're happy and you've achieved what you want to achieve, and you can relax. It's it's the journey where the enjoyment lies. And so I think we all have a collective
When did you realize that?
desire. When did I realize that?
Because I kind of figured that out about in the last year and a half, maybe. Yeah, in terms of like, it's about the journey. Like, because before I was kind of like 100 miles per hour, but then when that doesn't work, then what are you just going to say?
I was going to say, I read somewhere, I read quite a lot on mindset and human behavior and psychology, really interested in that. There's this thing called the arrival fallacy, which is this incorrect perception that you think, if I just get to that point, I'll be happy. But then you're not. And then you're always trying to reach the next thing. So I think, a lot of people go, if I just get that promotion, or if I just get that new house, or if I just get married, or if I just have kids, or whatever it is, they think that brings them happiness. But it's called the hedonic treadmill. It's like you always then return to your former state of happiness. So these external things only bring kind of fleeting happiness. So I think I kind of realized that through lots of things in my life. I did a lot of those things. I did become a CEO. I did get married. I got 2 boys, and as I'm incredibly grateful and privileged in so many things I have. But I wouldn't say I'm not necessarily any happier just because of those things. I think your happiness comes from gratitude, what you're grateful for, on living in alignment to your personal values, and trying to avoid some of the tempting things in life, like material things, like comparing to other people. And so I think that was just a gradual process of realization.
But when you say gradual process of realization, some people don't realize it today. I walk around and I meet loads of different people, and some older, some younger. The younger you can excuse because obviously they're still learning and growing, but especially the older, like there's a few people that I know personally, you probably know some as well, I just cry all the time. Like every time you meet them, there's always an issue, there's always something going on, and like what I realized is, especially when I had like loads of problems mounted upon me, I realized that you just gotta release it. You just gotta let it go. Like it's part of the process, it's part of the learning, and then like the only way you grow is kind of by letting go. Because if you harbor all them emotions and all the hurt and all the pain, then you just be stuck in that. Like you're just stuck in that mindset. Like is it the same for you? Or?
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I mean, talking about letting go is an interesting phrase, because that's actually, we went through a bit of a kind of realignment with the organisation the last few years as we continue to grow. Sorry, not last few years, in the last year. And a lot of that is me stepping out, and my role is a lot more externally focused now. So kind of networking and partnerships, and really delving into our new delivery growth model, more stuff in the media and PR stuff. And that means I have to kind of let go from some of the internal stuff within the organization. There's great people that are leading on it that I can trust implicitly. And I'm not going to be in the detail. I'm not going to be in the reads. And that's where I had to detach from that identity, as a founder that we were talking about earlier. Exactly. So letting go has been a real key part of what I've had to do.
Was it easy to do that?
No, definitely not easy.
So how long was the process? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I think we did that kind of mini realignment about 6 months ago. But that's where.
But how long were you kind of like anticipating and thinking about it, and then to actually do it?
Like
how long was that process before that?
Yeah, we were thinking about that a lot. Now we're trying to be a lot more planned. We're a more established organisation now, so we're now thinking more 5 years in the future as opposed to just 12 months ahead. So we know things are going to change again. If we can support more young people, which we've got that strategy and mission and vision to do, then things will always be changing. It's bit of a contradiction and an ironic statement, but the only constant is that we're always changing.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that. I was thinking about that. Yeah.
So we've got to be prepared, and it's got to be in our culture that things aren't always going to be the same, and we need, that's in our DNA really. It's in our culture. It's
Yeah.
in our progressive values.
I mean, I come up with like a quote like for myself, especially when things were getting on top of me and I was trying to figure a way out, like because I kind of went through like quite a lot in a short space of time. So for me, it was like I was trying to focus on these three things: being receptive, responsible, and relentless. Like that was kind of
Nice.
like my own mantra. Like I kind of made it up, like
Like it?
it's just randomly on my bed, like because I was thinking like I need something to kind of like jig me up. So
Yeah.
receptive kind of come in when you're on about to your story in terms of like being receptive to other people and like because before I never really used to take other people's ideas on. Like I kind of just be like my idea, that's my idea, and then I'm gonna go with that. And then I clock that I fail a lot, and I fail forward, but I fail. So then what I realized is that I gotta kind of change up a bit and take other people's opinions aboard. I might not necessarily agree with them, but at least I can understand that kind of point of view.
Yeah.
Then you kind of formulate your own opinion, then you kind of move forward. But that way, the risk is less greater because obviously it's a calculated risk, but you've narrowed down the gap, so it's more highly likely to be successful. And then when I talk about responsible, it's like once you've got the idea, when as you were saying, being a founder to then being a CEO, is where do you take the idea? How do you develop it? So that's being responsible within yourself to kind of know what you're about and then know what you need to do on a day-to-day basis to kind of get there, and then you can't fall short upon that.
Yeah.
And then obviously the third one, relentless, in terms of you keep going.
Yeah.
So does that kind of resonate with you at all as well?
Yeah, I like that. So that's your kind of 3 R's.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, if they're your values, that's what I was talking about when I said, if you can live your life in alignment with those values, that will bring you happiness, almost regardless of what it is
exactly.
you're doing. You know,
the
you
extenuating circumstances.
you could have, and I'm sure you won't do this, but you could have 2 completely opposing jobs. But if you exercise those values in each of those jobs, then you're more likely to be content.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not necessarily about what you do; it's about how you do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And the fact that you know those values is great.
Yeah.
And if you can every day think, how am I living in alignment with those 3 things? Then that's a
it's a good base
sure
level,
way
isn't it?
to have a good
but
life.
it come through hardship, like it come through like the fire, like that's what I kind of call it, because I've always been kind of like ruthless in a sense, not like in terms of like I'm mean to anyone or anything, but when it comes to like I talk about football a lot, but when it comes to like playing football, because I used to play football at a good level, so then it was being ruthless in the edge of like competitively, like I was always too the other side, too passionate, too kind of committed, and too, as you were saying before, like in the fabric of whatever I was doing, I was kind of associating myself like within it, like internally. And then what I realized is like you can't do that. Like I feel like you had that learning as well when talking about your story, but then like thinking about it now, it kind of resonates with me because I realized that you can't be like that. You can't be too within it, because then if something goes wrong again, it hits you even harder.
And we're talking about things that are either with or either within or without your control.
Yeah, exactly.
And these things, you can't control what might happen to you. You might have some really bad news. You might have a bereavement. You might have change in circumstance, change in your health. So you kind of, they're internal things that you can control. And that's where your focus should be.
Yeah, 100%. So then let's just kind of leave it on the final point of sport for life, and then the trajectory of it, and for you yourself, like your kind of mantras and like what you feel like doing moving forward, like in terms of like your kids, your family, and that kind of the overall trajectory basically.
So sport for life at the organisation. We've got
you mentioned it before, but we'll just leave at this point.
Our new 5-year strategy. So we want to work with more young people. We're quite ambitious to continue to do that. We've got quite an exciting new delivery partnership model where we're going to be working more in partnership with other organisations to support them as we continue to grow in support of our mission and vision. So exciting things at Sport for Life. Me personally, I tend not to kind of set specific goals for in X number of years I need to have done A, B or C. I mean,
but what's your overall, because obviously you take each day as it comes, like I know that through your whole story, but what I mean by the overall kind of aim, like not like you're like 100% committed to getting there, but like just kind of
just
like
the
overall,
general aim.
like just because everyone has that, like a general, where you want to be kind of
to be happy, and that's the only success that really matters.
That's a killer line.
I'd always put my family and so I've got 2 boys. Always put them first out of everything. I want to try and raise them to be really happy, kind, thoughtful, considerate members of society that understands what opportunities they've had and understand how they need to be a good person in today's world. Then if I've done that, then great.
Yeah.
But I think...
Is that a scary thought? In terms of like, because they might have a different kind of upbringing to you, because obviously you've gone above and beyond what your father did. So now they've got it even easier, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you kind of build that discipline, work ethic within them?
I think as long as they're happy and they're not hurting anyone, that's the main thing, really. You know, whatever they want to do, whatever they want to be, whatever they want their passions, whatever they want to pursue, whoever they want to be with. Like, I've got no kind of expectations on that, as long as they're happy and as long as they're not hurting anyone, and as long as they're being positive members of society, then that's all I care about, really. You know, I said for me, the most important thing is happiness, as I think it should be for everyone. That's the, you know, society almost teaches us to define success as wealth or status or title or possessions or things like that, material things, external things, whereas actually I think the only thing that matters is your values and your happiness. And I think values comes into happiness.
Yes, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Nah, bro.
It's a good way.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
Just about done the handshake.
Nice one.